Thanks for coming in today. And I'm going to hereby call to order the 12th meeting of the 62nd session of Student Senate on October 30th at 7:02 p.m. With that, we'll move into roll call. When I call your name, please answer with either present or here. Senator Bradley. Senator Brown.
Here.
Senator Cowden.
Present.
Senator Cunningham.
Present.
Yeah, I thought I saw it. Senator Day.
Here.
Senator Ezell.
Here.
Senator Flores was excused. Yeah. Senator Glover.
Here.
Senator Hopper.
Here.
Senator James.
Here.
Senator Kata.
Here.
Senator Kahinde. Senator Kendrick.
Here.
Senator Kennedy.
Here.
Senator Khan.
Here.
Senator Lepetsky.
Here.
Senator Mattson.
Present.
Senator John Miller.
Here.
Senator Kate Miller.
Here.
Senator Morgan. Senator Mounts.
Present.
Senator Nazir.
Present.
Senator Sanchez.
Here.
Senator Tehran.
Here.
Senator Tubak.
Here.
Senator Tucker.
Present.
Senator Wang.
Present.
Senator Webb.
Here.
Senator Wright.
Present.
Senator Zacharias.
Here.
So we have officially met quorum tonight with 27 total in attendance. Simple majority will be 14. 2/3 of present will be 18. 2/3 of majority will be 27. Moving into section 3, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to be noted for the previous meeting's minutes? Seeing none, they will be adopted as such. Moving into section 4, public forum. Public forum provides a chance for individuals to have the privilege of speaking before the Senate. This is a time for the association to listen to what the community has to say, and to that we offer our undivided respect and attention. I would like to remind everyone that although we allow the speakers the privilege to use this platform, the opinions of the speakers do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the association or the university. Lastly, in the essence of time, we do limit speeches in public forum to a length of 3 minutes unless the speaker has spoken to us about it ahead of time. And with that, we do have a few individuals that have requested. So with our first individual, Senator Tucker, would you approach?
Hey, how's everybody doing? Good? Awesome. So, I'm sure everyone's wondering why I'm here today. Well, I come here before you today to address my fellow senators, to make an observation, to address y'all on what I see as the state of the 62nd session and the state of our university. And to spell out what I see to be a slow-moving, slow-evolving crisis here on campus, and what I think the role of SGA is to address this issue. To encourage my fellow senators to take a more active role in our positions, to say that I think we can be more than just a session, a 60-second session, the 60-second session. We can be more than just a session that passes RSOs and funding bills. To say that I believe we have a responsibility and an obligation by mandate of our peers to do more than that, to be more than that, to work together to actively address and get ahead of potential issues that exist here on campus. And, moreover, to spell out what I believe some of these issues to be. In particular, I'm going to spell out what I see as 3 particular issues here on campus. To begin with, student athletes. Student athletes here on campus, well, let me back up a little bit. You can go to that slide. That would help. Yeah, awesome. So, our university, as you can see here, spends $7.8 million a year. Approximately $7.8 million a year on athletics. Now, looking at this breakup, we can see that a good chunk of it comes from institutional support, but another big chunk of it comes from student fees. Out of curiosity, of that $7.8 million, how much do you think the athletic department spends on our student athletes? If you had to throw out a number, what would it be? You want to go to that next slide? Of that $7.8 million, $7.8 million, only $4.17 million gets spent on the needs of our student athletes. 4.1 million. That's about 53%. That is egregious. That is outrageous. That is crazy. Here are students who, by their sheer positions as athletes at our university, they elevate the notoriety of our university. They bring us to a level of national conversation. And our athletic department can only spend 53% of the funds we give it, our university, the WSU proper. We can only spend 53% of that money on them? Of that $4 million. This data is from last year, so let me preface with that. Of that $4 million, only $130,000 went to their medical needs. These are students who their sheer position alone puts them in a position where their sheer status, their activity as a student athlete, puts them in a position where health will play an important role, a critical role in their ability to perform academically. And given that they are doing work for us by elevating us to this national level of conversation, of notoriety, we owe it to them to do more than just spend 53% of that monies on them. We owe it to them to make sure they don't have medical needs that are being ignored. 53%, and of that, not even a percentage point hardly, is spent. Hardly. If you want to go to the next slide. So, moreover, I wanted to point out that this is an athletic department that annually makes $2 million a year. $2 million. Of that, not a dime is given back to our university according to their budget reports. Not a dime. 53% gets spent on athletes. 53% of what our university gives them gets spent on athletes. They make $2 million a year, approximately on average, and not a dime comes back to our school. So the question becomes here, because obviously this is a problem, right? The question becomes here, what can we as members of SGA do about this? How can we address the needs of these student athletes and this disparity in funds going to and coming from the athletic department? What can we do about it? I'll be honest, and the first one to say, not much right now. Not much, because the student fees that we give them, they're not under our control. They're not under the control of SGA. But isn't that our mandate? To determine how student fees are spent? Isn't that what we agreed to when we took these seats? So So what can we do about that? What can we do to change this conversation, to take charge of those funds, and to make sure the needs of our student athletes are being met? Well, we can begin by having conversations. Just that. Just simply having conversations. By talking to administration. By talking to members of the ICAA. The director of athletics reached out to SGA and asked for a meeting. I'm planning on setting up a meeting sometime in the near future with the director. And I invite any of my fellow senators to come talk to me and potentially join in this meeting. Because I do think there are things we need to help address, right? Now, to keep things moving along, if you want to go to that next slide, I just wanted to point out, since I brought up this point of why don't we cover their insurance, there are only 306 student athletes at our university. And if you were to look at the breakdown of the cost of insurance for them, to cover for an entire year their insurance costs would only cost $1 million. It only costs $1.1 million. That means we could cut by 60% the student fees to the athletic program and still cover everything we're covering currently plus more. So what can SGA do? Well, this is one thing we can do. This is part of our job, right? To make these sorts of observations and say, where do I start? Who do I talk to? Is this actually a concern, or is this just something I've noticed that I think, it's a problem? Well, we start by having conversations. Just like any good piece of legislation, it starts with conversation. If you want to go to the next slide. You can skip to a few others. Yeah, there. Awesome. So, because I want to keep things moving along, wanted to change our attention now to another group of students that I think we could address their needs of, right? In particular, grad students, but especially GTAs. Full disclosure, I am a GTA, so this is an issue of particular interest to me. Every year, our university spends about $5.9 million on assistant stipends. And like this says, of those going to, quote, direct GTAs, $1.9 million goes into that stipend. Go to the next slide, please. So what does that breakdown mean? What does that look like? Well, what that looks like is for those grad students who are responsible for 11% of all teaching on campus. Per semester, we get paid about, on average, $4,000 or $4,500. To teach 11% of the classes, that is what we're getting paid. I don't know about y'all, but I would say that any group that does 11% of a company's job, in the case of our university, right, that could probably be reevaluated. So, the point being here, what can we do? Well, again, have conversations, because that's where all of this is coming back to at the end of the day. Conversations, conversations, conversations. All legislation comes down, first and foremost, with talking. Talking to those who are in the know, talking to those who the issues involve. If you want to go to the next slide. So, again, what can SGA do about that? The case of GTAs? Just talk. Ask what options there are. Ask what we can do. Try to elevate the level of conversation. Make things known. Be heard. 3 minutes. Thank you. And finally, I wanted to point out what I believe to be a slow evolving crisis on campus and what I think we honestly should focus on. I don't know how many of y'all feel or have made this observation, I should say. There are several departments on campus that are both underfunded and understaffed. And when I say several, I mean several. This is a problem and we need to voice it. We have a duty to our university, to our peers, to our loved ones, our friends, and future students to make it known. If we see that as a problem, I personally do, we need to elevate that conversation. This is our job, right? And that's really all I'm here to do, is to say, let's not be that lame duck session. Let's not just pass RSOs. Let's not just pass funding bills. Let's not be the session that just sits by and lets things slide. Let's hold ourselves accountable to our peers. Let's hold administration accountable to us, and let's speak out on things. Let's vote for more than just RSOs. Let's write legislation. Let's have conversations. Let's work with the Sunflower. Let's work with our local community. Let's be the session that all future sessions gets compared to. Let's be the session that says, this is the blueprint. This is the group I want to be like. This is the group that spells out hope for what SGA can be. Let's get to work and let's work together. And with that, I will yield the rest of my time.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Sorry, that was a little close. Senator Lepetsky.
Mine was regarding the statistics you had with student athletes and their funding and everything. Did you look at travel expenses when you were looking at that?
I did.
Okay, and that was, sorry. That's a follow-up.
So the travel expenses wasn't included because that's not going directly into their academic or physical needs. That's just getting them to the games. So that's an expense of the sport in my mind, right? And that's how I was looking at these data points.
Before we get to your follow-up, Senator James.
Going to the graduate assistant part of this presentation, since you guys are students, do you guys get like tuition waivers or anything like that?
We do, paid for by the state.
Senator Izzo.
So on your slide about, you had a chart talking about the amount of revenue that the ICAA brought in and then their profits. Are you kind of talking about the amount of money that student athletes bring in for the university and for the ICAA versus the fact that they get to see none of it?
No, in that case, if you'll actually go back to that, that would be helpful. Right there, awesome. So if you look at the ICAA's budget report for last year, for the 2018 year, what the report breaks down is what the ICAA pulled in revenue and then what it spent in expenditures, right? So it has a breakdown of this went into coaching fees, this went into this went into that. That is what these numbers are from. So the revenues are all monies made by the ICAA through ticket sales, through the direct support, through student fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Similarly, the expenditures are everything you would expect therein. So the profit is, quite honestly, just that. It is what they made at the end of the year. This is not looking at anything in particular as far as how do I want to say that? It's not that sort of a breakdown, right? Like, it's not the NCAA or NCAA debate that's going on. It's all revenues and all expenditures by the athletic program.
Senator Lepetsky, do you still have one? Senator Glover.
Yeah, so you mentioned 53% in your slide dealing with the athletics, but did you see where the other 47% go by any chance? Because I know it seems a little bit accurate because I know you're looking for a little bit of fluctuation within paying the athletes, but I just don't see how much you're thinking about getting though.
Right. So the way the budget report is broken down and the way it's presented in all three different versions of it that they have online, because they have different breakdowns and different reports for different groups, right? The way the budget report presents itself, it doesn't actually tell you that, okay, of this money, this is where the rest of it went. It just tells you this is what we spent on this particular category. This is what we spent on this particular category. Does that make sense what I mean?
Senator James.
Could you speak a little bit more on the tuition waivers that you receive from the state from being a GA?
Absolutely. So those dollars are actually spent by the state, right? It's not the university is covering our tuition. It is the state is covering our tuition because we are, in some sense, executing a job of the state in that way. Beyond that, I'm hesitant to speak on the exact legalities of it and the ideologies behind it because the history is a little hazy. I was actually just speaking to one of the deans about this very thing today, and we were both saying the same thing. But this is a trend that you see in almost every state that GTAs, when we're teaching at a certain amount, so for example, if you have your entire tuition waived, what that means is you are teaching 50% FTE, full-time equivalent, and that is determined by your department. Usually it translates into you are working well over 20 hours. But the state then says, all right, you've hit this minimum number, we waive your tuition. And they have that as a scale as well. So if you hit, I think it's 30% FTE, it's 75% that they waive, 10% they waive 50%, so forth and so on. Does that make sense what I mean?
Senator Ezel.
So I know that stipends aren't the same thing as income, but do you know if you guys are at least getting paid minimum wage for the work that you guys put in for making lesson plans and actually teaching the class, or are you guys viewed as contractors by the university?
Right. The legalities of all of that, right? So the legality side of all of that, still, again, very hazy, right? I don't have all of the facts, and I will let you know and be perfectly upfront about that. I don't want to give the impression that I know all, I see all, because I don't. What I do know is that, as I said, we are paid on average, if you could go back to that slide really quick. We are paid on average $4 million. Wow, I wish we were paid $4 million. We are paid $4,500 on average per semester. What that translates to is per academic year, on average, our total pay comes out to be $11,226 if we teach all 3 semesters on average. That again is for 11% of the total teaching load on campus. We also have to pay all of the mandatory fees, the student fees, and parking. For the record, we get student parking, not faculty parking. But we also have to pay all of those fees, so that comes out to be about $1,600 or $1,600. And if we get health insurance through the university, it comes out to be about $444 a year, which I'll admit that's a steal, right? But still, altogether, that comes out to be about 20% of our yearly income, which means our take-home salary per year is $9,176 on average. Yeah, that's the best I can give you as far as a breakdown for all of that.
Senator, oh, sorry, I had somebody before you. Senator Kennedy.
It might sound a little weird, but is this based on you graduating as a GTA? Are you graduating to go into another profession, or is this per semester every year that you're going to be a GTA? How does this?
Right. So the way this works out is, so you're an undergrad, you get done with your degree, and you go to a university, and you say, I want to go to grad school now. And the school says, cool, awesome. You want to be a GTA? Yeah, I'd love to apply for a GTA. So you get a GTA post. And the school says, all right, cool, well, depending upon you meeting certain criteria, depending upon you hitting so many FTE hours or what have you, you will have so much of your tuition waived. Now, depending upon the department and the position you're taking for a GTA or a GSA or a GRA, because there are other types of GTA type posts, you can be paid according to a semesterly amount. Does that make sense what I mean?
For how long?
For how long? That is going to vary from school to school to school. Our university just recently, as I understand it, changed the funding rules for graduate assistant positions from 6 years of funding to now 10 years of funding. So what that means is you could be in a GTA post for 10 years, presumably. So that's 10 years of being a GTA or of a GSA or GRA or some other similar role. So say next year I wanted to become a GRA, a graduate research assistant. I could change that role and it would still count towards the same amount of time. Does that make sense what I mean? Yes.
Senator Wang.
From whatever you said, is that you have extended amount of work you need to do as a GTA or GRA or whatever? What's the benefit that go with you? I would say, what university give you guys, like for the position you are at?
Do you mean what? Explain. I'm sorry.
My question is, that pay is not that great, but what else they give you, like healthcare, and that's it?
We have to spend $185 for fall and spring on health insurance if we get through the university. We spend, I believe it's $74 in the summer for health insurance. Beyond that, the state waives our tuition. We get the pay that we get. And we have no protections in the process either. There are zero protections for us in that way. So there's, other than those few things.
Senator Nazir.
So regarding the athletics portion of your presentation, when you were talking about like health insurance and those benefits, have you looked into or spoken to past or present athletes and seeing if they feel like their needs are being fulfilled, or how, or if they see room for improvement? Like, have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, as a GTA, I've taken the time after my class to, after both of my classes, to speak to the handful of student athletes that I do have, and to students coming into the following class. And of those that I have spoken to, the first question I keep asking them, and I will admit this is a loaded question, but I think it gets to part of the heart of this problem, part of what I'm trying to bring attention to. The first question I keep asking them is, do you believe the university sees you as a student first or an athlete first? And consistently, every time, they keep telling me an athlete first. That has not changed once. In fact, if you can change to the slide with the questions. Moreover, to kind of that point, there is a exit exam that student athletes have to take every year as they leave. As I understand it, it is those who are graduating on their way out of the university. They take this exit exam. In some breakdown of general stats, nearly half of all of our student athletes who answer these questions, nearly half of them have said they would not come back to the university if they had to do it over again, and they would not suggest their friends come here. That's a problem.
Senator.
Nearly half. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You good? Senator Kata.
So I'm talking about this graduate teaching externships. You mentioned on an average they make $1,000 per month. So compared to the other universities, WSU pay very less to the externships here. So representing from SGA, do you have an idea to take steps to increase the percentage of the externship salary?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy that somebody asked me this question. I've actually been having a couple meetings now with different members of the grad school and other members of the administration, and there have been quite a few conversations about how we can address this issue. Something I have in our conversations discovered is this question of graduate assistant stipends. It has been a topic of debate and discussion since the 90s. The 90s. And one of the conversations I've had, it was pointed out that in that time frame, the stipend has only increased once in 2006 by $1 million. So it was something like $4 million in 2000 or prior to 2006. Then they increased it, and that's it. So as far as is there something being done? What can we do? There are plenty of things we can do to help subsidize it. For example, if we can find ways of encouraging companies to come to our university and create internship positions for grad students. This is one opportunity here where grad students can make money. Moreover, as an idea has been put forth, and I personally think is a phenomenal idea, having grad students working with companies lead teams of undergrads to answer different questions in industry. And in that way, because the company is receiving some sort of work, the grad student gets paid. So there are options out. It's just a matter of how are we going to tackle it, right? And this is where that conversation has to go. This is what that conversation aspect of this is all about, is identifying ideas and finding the best ways to tackle these problems. That is why ultimately I'm here today, right? Is to bring out that point, to point that out.
Senator Izzo.
In order for this to change, would this have to be a change in university policy or in Kansas state law? For GTAs.
For the GTA pay, right. You can tackle it a couple different ways. It could be a change in state law as required, or it could be that WSU takes it upon itself to say, we want to be competitive with other universities. We want to encourage the top minds in grad school to come to us. And if we want to do this, one way we can do that is by making sure our stipends are competitive. So there's two different ways we could address it. I know in the past and with several other universities, it has had to be addressed through state. Right now, there is a strike right now going on at Harvard where grad students are going on strike. They are trying to unionize because they are not being heard. This is not a problem unique to our school, but this is an opportunity for our school to lead the way and point the direction of what we want for our students and for future students moving forward. And that's, again, why I'm here, right, is to point that out. So to answer your question, either case.
Senator Mounts.
How do these numbers compare to other institutions that are research universities in Kansas?
Right. Yes. So these are averages. Let me point that out first and foremost. These are averages for department to department. So to answer your question would require a breakdown across departments. In general, our average is lower than some of the other states or other schools. And it is certainly lower than the national average. The national average for GTA pay is, if I remember the statistic correctly, $18,000 on the low end of the scale. The minimum is $18,000 on average. On the high end of the scale, because this is a spectrum of pay, it goes up to $36,000. Obviously, no one's going to say we think we should be paid $36,000 as grad students here at WSU, so let me be clear about that. But to answer that question of how does this compare, it's going to vary hugely depending upon one department, 2 state, and 3 school.
Senator Wing.
From what you said about different departments get paid differently, did you know why is it set up that way?
I do. The reason why is because this ultimately comes down to the department insofar as the school will say you have a minimum. Assuming your students are meeting these certain criteria, they have to be paid a minimum amount. Beyond that, we will allow you to fit that scale, right? So there's a couple things going on there. A lot of it has to do with the department's deciding whether they want to prioritize paying the grad students, I'll be frank, a living wage, or do they want to have a bunch of grad positions? And that is a balancing act, right? Like, we have to have enough grad students to make sure we can get some of the teaching done and to make sure we can get some of the research done we need. But we also need to try to balance that they can actually survive. So why is it that way? It's because it's a balancing act. You have a tug of war going on, and the best way to tackle this from within our university is to simply increase that overall stipend. That, I believe it was $5 million, $5.9 million. We'd have to increase that to actually truly tackle this problem.
Senator Nazir.
So I understand that this is, like, these are issues that SGA should tackle. But to start those conversations, have you thought about discussing this with the interim president or the president-elect who will be announced tomorrow, to kind of inform them on these issues? Like, even though this is, like, an issue you want to bring to us, like, is that something that you're thinking about doing?
Actually, absolutely. And to the interim president and to the provost, if you would like to have a meeting, I would absolutely like to have a meeting with you, because I find these issues to be something of concern for all of us, and I think we can all agree on that. So have I thought about it? Yes, and I would love to. In fact, I would invite all of us to have these sit-downs, right? That is, after all, part of our duties as members of SGA to sit down with two deans. So why not make it the provost and the incoming president? I encourage all of us to have these conversations.
Are there any other questions for our speaker? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time. Our next speaker will be Jared Novak, who is the Vice President for the Student Veterans Organization.
All right, how's it going, guys? So the Student Veteran Organization is actually putting on another event that's coming up starting in November. I think this is another one that everybody can get behind. We're doing Toys for Tots Drive. We are actually going to make this a competition between different groups. Right now we have the Student Veteran Organization. We have talked with certain members of SGA. We have Human Relations, and we also have the Alumni Association. They will be putting up boxes, and we're going to make it a competition. Usually during our competitions, we have some kind of prize give out like that. This time, since it's fair charity, we're not going to do that. But we will actually be having a plaque made, and it will hang in the SVO, and every year that this happens, the winner's organization will be actually going on the plaque. So it's kind of like bragging rights, everything like that. But we wanted to invite you guys to do this. Anybody else that has any other organizations, Greek Life, any other clubs around campus that wants to participate and give to at least a good cause, we'll be more than willing to work with you. The dates that this is going to happen are 22 November through 6 December, which 6 December is Dead Day. So it's the final day of the semester, and then we're going to give it all to Toys for Tots and let it go that way.
Any questions for our speaker? Thank you very much for your time. Sorry, experienced some technical difficulties. But with that, our next speaker is going to be Dr. Carolyn Shaw, Associate, Associate Vice President for Strategic Enrollment Management.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight. I have the exciting opportunity to bring something back to you that has been a long time in the coming. There is a piece of paper that summarizes the initiative that I'll be speaking to today. If you need specific references, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have. This initiative that we're calling the Open Alternative Textbook Initiative was originally brought to the Board of Regents from the Student Government Association's, the presidents that meet with KBOR once a month 2 years ago. And there was a request, is there anything we can do to help lower the cost of textbooks for students, recognizing that this is a real problem for students trying to get by with the expenses that come with being a student. And so this has been working its way through various channels. K-State actually led the initiative, and what they did is they created a program that would incentivize faculty to make choices of no-cost textbooks for students. And with a growing number of open educational resources, web resources, various other online educational sources, this has become more and more of a reality. And so the initiative that we're undertaking is modeled on K-State's. And what this will involve is two parts. The first is for courses to be designated as open and alternative textbook courses. And what that means is there'll be a $10 fee associated with the class. It's not per hour, it's just per class. And that is only for classes that have said they will have no textbook costs associated at all. So the savings would be, instead of having a $100 textbook, you might have a $10 fee associated with your class. And the way that money will be used is 60% of that will go back to the departments offering those courses as an incentive for them to develop more. And 40% will go back specifically to a grant to help faculty develop new resources themselves. So that might be writing open educational resources themselves that could be provided to even more students than just on this campus. It could be much more broadly used across a lot of campuses. So that is the program in a nutshell, and at this point I will just open it up for questions that you might have.
Are there any questions? Senator Nazir.
Sorry if you already answered this, but when would this initiative go into effect?
It will start to apply for classes being offered in the fall of 20.
Senator Day.
Yes. In terms of this distribution of the fee, 40% will actually go to the content of making the course, but of the 60%, is this purely just to incentivize the departments to adopt this, or is there some other reasoning behind this, and how will they use the money?
So just to clarify, the 40% is going into a grant fund that any faculty member could apply for if it took a lot more work to develop that course content. The 60% can be used based on how departments choose to use it. It might go directly to the faculty member to reward that choice. It might go towards travel for members in the conference. I know one department is talking about using it as actually a textbook scholarship fee for their majors.
Senator Lopetsky.
Do you know around the percentage of faculty or departments that are open to doing this, or is there any that said they wouldn't do the open alternative?
I think there's quite a bit of interest among faculty. There are a number of faculty who have said, we're already doing this.
Okay.
Are we still eligible to get the reward? And the answer is yes, that money will still come back to that department for that purpose.
Okay.
But people are quite open to it.
Senator Mounts.
How would this affect students, like, say, like in a music class or something like that? Because I know when I took band, we did not have a textbook, so would we still have to pay that fee, or no?
So the only courses that will be eligible to be designated are courses that actually do have course content that would be paid for originally.
Senator Day.
In terms of how this was adopted at K-State, were there any problems associated with how this is laid out at K-State, and how do you plan to address them, if there were any?
It actually was a pretty smooth rollout. They've done a pretty intensive study to see the impact. Did it have the impact they wanted it to have? And they've actually shown that it saved students over $1 million in textbook costs over the past couple of years.
Senator Ezel.
Do you know of any courses that, just because of the nature of it, would not be able to adopt this initiative?
So, as I suggested, anything that doesn't already have a fee associated with it, like yoga or something, comes to mind.
Senator Wayne.
I have a question, like, so the 60% go back to the department that is hosting that course, right? So for other departments, like, if you don't do this thing, then you don't get that money. So that grant is only going to that department who is implementing this?
Right, so the money is going back to the departments for those courses that have been approved. And if I understand your question correctly, is it to make sure that they're still carrying out that no-cost option?
So my question is, only departments that is using this is getting the benefit, but the ones that doesn't, for example, yoga, you're talking about, so
Right.
they don't get any benefit from this.
Right. If there's no cost associated with the class, then there's no need to incentivize changing that.
Senator Tucker.
I'm curious for classes that use online platforms like WebAssign or Alex, how will that play a role in there where students might not be buying a textbook, but they might instead pay for the PDF associated with the class?
Right. The way the initiative is framed right now, and it's possible that it could be revised if the faculty chose to do that, that it would only apply for those that have no costs associated, and that would include web content.
Senator Kahinde.
Okay, just to base off of this question, I just wanted to know, would this cover like workbooks as well? The $10 fee, will it cover workbooks?
Correct. Any thing that you would be asked to buy in addition would need to be at no cost.
Senator Mounts.
I know this issue was presented a week and a half ago at the Faculty Senate. How do you think the Faculty Senate feels on something like this issue?
This actually came to our office from the Faculty Senate. There was a faculty committee that was put together last year, and the charge at the end of the year by President Smith Campbell was to have academic affairs put together this initiative. And so the report that came back to the Senate was an answer to that charge from them.
Senator Tubak.
So how much grant money is available to be requested, I guess, applied for?
You mean as a starting fund?
Sorry, I mean as a total. So the total number of classes that could implement this kind of thing.
So for the initial rollout, obviously there's no money in the fund at the moment because there's been no fees charged. So there'll be some a special set aside in academic affairs to start that off. And then all the money that's collected in that 40% distribution will be allocated back out for faculty use to develop more materials.
Senator Brown.
I wanted to ask, when will you guys start the committee, or have you already started it?
The committee's not established yet. The plan for to expedite the rollout for next fall, because fall classes are already scheduled, is to do it manually. We'll have a deadline of February 1st to get applications in. We'll manually get those marked into the catalog before enrollment starts for March. And then, and so you'll be able to see whether those classes have that designation or not. So I would say the committee will likely form in early January.
Senator Mattson.
Do you know if students, when they enroll in classes, will be able to see if open alternative textbook will be used in that class?
Yes, so you might see designations in the course catalog right now that will say a global learning class or an applied learning content class. These will have a similar designation.
Senator Wing.
Who will be like managing the financial part of it, the committee or different departments?
Academic affairs will manage it.
Senator Kennedy.
Once the department has decided to go with the program, would they have the option, if the program isn't going so well, to opt out the next year, or is there a time limit for how they're going to stay with the program?
So if a department chose to not have their course designated that way, we've had some questions about that. What if I am already not charging students anything and I don't want to charge students a fee? And that was actually the department's solution was we're just going to give it back to the students through a scholarship fund. And so if departments wanted to not have their courses designated that way, that's entirely their choice.
Senator Kahindi.
So just out of curiosity, how do you guys plan to like fund this stuff? Because I know most of the textbooks are like external sources like Mastering Physics or WebAssign. How do you plan to, and they cost like $180 or $80, how do you plan to just fund it with just $10?
So it's not to fund the textbook. The choice would be for a faculty member to find a resource that did not cost anything. So they would have to change textbooks. And that's part of why the grant is there as well, is that if there's not good resources available, then this would provide support for faculty to actually develop those materials.
Senator Taran.
Would universities be losing out on money since the bookstore produces a certain amount of like revenue that goes back to the university?
There are some revenues involved there. It does not come. I don't know how to answer that directly. I don't know exactly where those bookstore revenues go. Yeah.
Any other questions for our speaker? Seeing none, thank you ever so much for your time. All right, moving into section 5, officer reports. Item A, President's report.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so today was the JAGK conference, so the Jobs for American Graduates in Kansas. Thank you to everyone who was able to come out and be on the panel. I really appreciate it. I think overall it went pretty well. A lot of the students who attended asked questions, got to know what it was like to, be in college, and, lots of questions about costs and how do you pay for things and are you working, and yeah, so that was really interesting and it went well. Just a reminder to submit projects and or initiatives that you are currently working on that correlate with the strategic plan. Nancy and I are needing those. Those are due November 8th. So either talk with your committees, or if you know of something that either your committee is doing or you're doing, please email those to me and or Nancy, because we really need those so we can start developing what we want to pinpoint as our initiative that we're doing as SGA with the strategic plan. Reminder, student fees applications are still open. Please apply. We still only have 8 applications, I do believe. So we really, 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 really need people for like fine arts and applied studies. Yeah, so please encourage others to apply as well. And then the last thing that I really have is that, as we all know, the president-elect announcement is tomorrow at 2:30 in this room, so RC 233. I highly recommend that you all attend, and if you can't, I would watch the live stream of it. I'm really excited, and I think it's going to be great. So if you can come, please do so you have the opportunity to at least know who it is. I can't, like I posted in the Facebook page, I can't promise that you'll get an opportunity to talk with them or even shake their hand because they're probably going to be all over the place. But at least knowing who it is a great start. And then also with that, please keep the office clean. They will be taking a tour of the SGA office tomorrow. So if you go back to the office and you had a cup out or whatever, or you used a cup, please wash it and put it back. Throw away your trash. Just make sure the office is nice and clean for our new president. For the treasurer, the Budget and Finance Committee is currently working through the applications for individual and organizational funding, and it is going smoothly. Student fees are quickly approaching, and applications are still open. If anyone is interested in joining the Student Fees Committee, I encourage you to apply soon. There are no funding bills on the floor this week because everything was taken care of last week. Just kidding. Apparently there will be one here soon. And then for Director of Public Relations, we are working through some bugs with the survey, but it should still go out by the end of this week. I will be posting the usual sign-up sheet for November events on the Facebook page, so keep an eye out for that. And I do believe that is up now. I saw it earlier, so that is out there now. Also, SGA scholarships open on November 1st, so be sure you spread the word to your friends that they are open. Thank you. And that is all I have.
Any questions for the president, Senator Nazir?
Do you have any idea if the president is going to come to a Senate meeting or to answer any questions, or do you suggest that we schedule appointments with them?
I planned on bringing that up. On Friday, Cabinet is meeting with the new president-elect, so I figured that with my conversations with them tomorrow, since I get to spend the rest of the day with them, I would bring that up, and then also we would bring that up during our meeting with them on Friday. However, I don't know when that would happen, and I wouldn't recommend making appointments right now because we don't know, where they're coming from, how soon they're going to be able to start. And they're probably going to be super overwhelmed because there are so many different things. But I will highly, highly, highly encourage for them to come to Senate to speak and introduce themselves and things like that. So, yeah.
Senator Mounts?
Will all the potential nominees for the president be here tomorrow?
Like all the candidates that were put forward? I would not believe so. But I don't know. I don't know why they would be.
Senator Day?
Dumb question, but does it start at 2 o'clock or 2:30? I've heard both.
So 2 o'clock is, I think the formal, I think there's a formal process of the regions have to take a vote to announce, publicly hire and announce the new president. I think that is happening at 2, and then at 2:30 is the reception of the actual meet and greet kind of thing. So I would just plan on being here at 2:30. If you show up early, great. That's what I've just been telling everybody, though. So. But I think you're also still welcome at 2. Yeah.
Senator Sanchez?
Can you remind me again where the applications for a student fees committee are?
They're on the website. So if you just pull up the homepage, all of the application, there should be a button on the homepage that'll take you directly to the application. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for the president? See none. Thank you for your time. With that, we'll move into item B, Vice President's report. Excuse me. So this week has really been more administrative, trying to have conversations about what positions would look like. Talking about changes to ones that aren't filled, having discussions and meetings with senators to discuss some of their legislation, things like that. Potential changes that may be on the mind, or who to talk to, and linking senators that are working on like-minded projects, and kind of hooking them up and hey, this senator is actually working on something that you're working on. You guys might want to cooperate. You may have information that they don't, things like that. Other than that, I don't remember if I put out the community garden update on where we were sitting with that. But was it Monday? Monday we had a meeting with facilities and went over the kind of the game plan. So with the design that I had laid out that was made available to all of y'all, and if you need it again, I'm more than happy to send it out. Just let me know. But so we kind of walked over what it looks like, what would need to be done. At that which point, facilities said they would rather have, like, while the idea sounded great, they wanted to bring in like the carpenters and landscapers and have a further discussion of exactly what would be needed, so we can kind of estimate a price or like the amount of lumber we would need for the boxes that we plan on building and things like that. Speaking of which, that's one of the things that I'm kind of waiting on, because I designed the boxes to a certain spec, but then like what type of lumber are we doing? Are we going to specifically try and do reclaimed lumber, or if there was any alterations to the boxes themselves, then the total number would change. So as soon as we finalize the plan of what we would like to install, I'll take that number over to a couple of our lumber donors and see how much they are willing to give and or give us a discount on in order to meet that. And then we can make a plan from there of, you know, how much this is going to cost outside of what is donated. There will be a meeting, not this Thursday, but next Thursday with them for that. And that's pretty much it for me. Questions? Senator Wang.
Did you have a budget set up for that already?
Kind of. So we're really going to base our budget around what we can get and what we would like to do. So how much we get will determine what we're going to move forward with and budget in that manner. So once we get a total back from the grants that we've applied for, if we are awarded them, we'll say this is what we have, this was the plan, how does it need to adjust, and work from there. So it's basically budgeting backwards instead of forwards. For how much money do we need to raise, it's how much money are we getting, how much is getting donated, and figuring out what is feasible. Because the design that I had made is very modular, and we can do installments. So like if we can only pay for half of it at the start to break ground, that's what we'll do, and then later on we'll expand out. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move. Moving into section 6, other reports. Item A, academics.
Okay, hi everyone. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is an update on the general ed requirements that I spoke about at the previous meeting. Last that you guys, well, most of you guys heard was that it was the proposal to be changing the general ed credits from 42 credits to 33 credits. That has been amended from 33 to 36 credits, and that was approved by the faculty. And so the next meeting discussing this issue is on November 11th. Also, my meeting met today and we talked about the plus and minus system. We are going to further pursue this issue whenever we get feedback from the results from the survey, because this was a question on the survey. If you guys have any strong opinions over this issue, then please email me and we can set up a time to talk about this. And that's about it. I'm open to questions.
Are there any questions for the chair? Senator Miller.
So, am I understanding that like it's passed, that we're going to reduce it down to 36, or is it still in talks?
For the general?
Yeah.
They amended it. They approved that change.
Cool.
Any other questions for the chair?
And just to add really quick to that, the November 11th meeting that the chairwoman talked about is the final vote to actually determine the recommendation that leaves faculty, and then from there, if it passes, then they're moving forward. That if it fails, then it goes back to the faculty senate.
Are there any other questions for the chair? Seeing none, we'll move into item B, Safety and Student Services Chair.
So first off, last week I told you Coffee with the Cop is Wednesday, November 13th. Change that on your schedules. It's going to be on Tuesday, November 12th because the RSC space wasn't available on the Wednesday, so we just moved it to our second option. And so for that, we're going to have it downstairs in the Starbucks in the RSC, and I have confirmation that at least 3 officers are going to be present, and that's just at least. There could be more. And then we will also have Krispy Kreme donuts and coffee from Starbucks. So this week I've also been spending a lot of time in my new role in the Parking Appeals Committee. That's been taking up quite a bit of time since fall break and basketball season has started. There's a lot of appeals coming through, so that's just something that I've been dealing with. And then another thing is one of the issues that was given to my committee from the Senate retreat when we wrote on those Post-it notes that were attached to the wall for weekend move-in, like having move-in times for the weekend. So apparently, thanks to Senator Turan, students aren't restricted to moving in on the Tuesday and Friday. They can move in on the weekend. Since this isn't really known, we're going to try to advertise it more and make it more known, especially for students who are coming in for their first year at WSU. And lastly, I sent a safety walk PDF with all the results we found to facilities and UPD. I'm waiting for something back, but I'm hoping to meet with them next week to answer any questions they may have and see what areas can be addressed and what we need to do to make some changes. And I'm open for questions.
Are there any questions for the chair? Seeing none, we'll move into item C, Diversity, Empowerment, and Inclusion Chair.
Alrighty, so last Thursday I had met with Daniel English. He is the kind of graduate assistant at ODI. So I worked with him and we created, I recorded a video of him kind of explaining the history behind pronouns, different pronouns usage, things like that. I know tomorrow is the 31st, so that video will be edited and sent out to the DPR to send out to all of our social media platforms by tomorrow. And then I will also be meeting with the President's Diversity Council, I believe, a week from today. So I will bring you a report next meeting that we have in November. And then I have been in contact with my PDC chair, Bobby Berry, kind of discussing like what went on. Unfortunately, I do miss the last meeting due to personal reasons. So overall, it's been kind of a slower week. But we're looking, hopefully, to start working on some new projects soon. We do have a town hall event we discussed in our committee. We were hoping to have a graphic sent out. I do need to talk to the DPR about that. Have a graphic sent out before, I believe, next week or the week after. And then all that fun stuff. And then lastly, we did not meet quorum today, unfortunately. We had quite a few senators be sick or miss due to their own personal reasons. However, we did discuss the bill written by the special committee that Senator Webb chaired. So we looked over that bill, kind of discussed things. We will have a more definite idea of what our committee wants to do by next meeting, and then we will send it on to the Ways and Means Committee for final review before the Senate votes on it. Other than that, I'm open for questions.
Senator Nazir.
Can you explain a little more about the town hall and what's going on with that?
So we're still kind of in the planning stages. However, we're expecting to have it by November 20th from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. here in the RSC. I have tasked 4-ish committees, or subcommittees, I guess, in my actual DEI to reach out to like who we want to be speaking. We have heard back from, I believe, 2 of them. It is Dr. Marche Fleming Randall, and we've also heard from, I am blanking on the name, Christine Taylor, and then unfortunately Dr. Terry Hall will not be able to make it due to a K-board meeting, and we have not heard back from Dr. Austin. So we will actually be extending an invitation to Dr. Shaw, who came and spoke to us today during public forum, to come there. Other than that, we're still focusing. I am meeting with Gabe hopefully tomorrow to focus on budgeting and like what we're going to do for food. The idea is probably something just more snack related, something a little cheaper. And then we also have like an outreach committee, which are focusing on getting student groups to actually attend the town hall. And there's a planning, which unfortunately both senators were gone today, but there's planning for the tentative agenda. So that's where we're standing right now. So we have kind of an idea of what we're doing. It's going to be focusing on campus culture and just kind of transparency with certain administrators here at WC and like what they're doing to help support diversity.
Any other questions? Senator Nazir.
This is probably a dumb question, but for that town hall, would you be considering, I'm sure they would be really busy, but the president, by chance, just to kind of get them in the loop of what's going on and student concerns?
So that was not on really a list. We haven't really thought about that, and I know that with the new president coming in, we're not really sure when they're going to be able to we're not sure if they're going to be in by the time that the town hall is. So that's something we can definitely look into, but most likely is not going to happen.
Any other questions for the chair? Seeing none, we'll move into item D, Ways and Means.
Hello, everyone. So I don't have much to report, but there are a lot of things in process in Ways and Means Committee. We are still deciding on our internal social that we want to do, like where do we want to do it, when do we want to do it, and what food do we want and all that fun stuff. And we're still working on the Supreme Court bills and resolutions. And right after that, we will start the process of writing the bills regarding election commission, which is to basically look over at what positions there are, how can we combine them, make them more efficient, not effective. And right after that, we're going to start Senator Review Board bill, basically, which makes the Senate review process much easier and much, simpler, and it makes sense. So those are the things the committee will be working on. So with that, I stand for questions.
Are there any questions for the chair? Seeing none, we'll move into item E, Special Committee on Membership.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to give you a little update. So our committee is pretty much wrapped up. Spent last week writing the bill that was all sent out to you earlier this week. So our deadline was to have it proposed by this meeting, and so did that, and now we're just waiting to vote on it next week. And am I going to be speaking to it later? Or is that now? Okay. But if any of you have any questions about it or for me, please ask.
Are there any questions for the chair? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move past Section 7, Appointments, into Section 8, Unfinished Business. Item A, SB-62-068, Judicial Records Act. while we're getting that squared away. This one we did talk about last time. We had questions. So we will move directly into the debate if there are no further questions at this time. Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move. Well, Senator Mattson.
I was going to do this before this was brought, but I move to amend the agenda to include Funding Bill 6213 under new business.
Before we do that, could you explain a little bit about what it is so we know what we're voting on?
Absolutely. So this is a funding bill for organizational funding. There are 3 organizations included under the funding bill. In the order of Aging Studies Student Association, Future Healthcare Professionals, and Hispanic American Leadership Organization. The first request for Aging Studies Student Association was for $250 for conference travel. Future Healthcare Professionals requested $350 for a tablecloth that would be used for branding and advertising at various events. And then Hispanic American Leadership Organization requested funding in the amount of $1,850 for a conference. As Budget and Finance Committee, we approved the amounts in full, and that's what's on the bill.
Now knowing that, is there a second? Senator Mounts with the second. That being said, if there are no objections, we will add this item to the agenda under new business. See none, motion carries. Moving back to the item at hand, SB-62-068. Moving directly into the debating period, is there anyone wishing to speak in debate at this time?
With a motion.
Senator Wright.
I motion to move to adopt this bill by unanimous consent.
Any objections?
I object.
There has been an objection, so we will not be moving forward with that. Is there anyone wishing to debate at this time?
So just to explain that, I think it should be, people should have, since this is such a major change to the Constitution and to the statutes, we should see like an actual full vote of the Senate, and you should be free to vote yes, no, or abstain from this vote, considering the changes and what you think.
Let's keep the debates to the motion at hand. But, thank you. Senator Tubak.
Sorry, just point of information. We're voting on adding a bill to the schedule, correct?
No, that one has already passed by unanimous. So I said if there are no objections, we will adopt it.
Thank you.
And so since there were no objections, it was automatically adopted as such.
Gotcha.
What we are doing right now is having a debate about the current item, which is the Judicial Records Act. Do you have a debate for this item, or does that fully answer your question? Is there anyone wishing to debate at this time? Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. All those in favor, please raise your hand and hold them high. All opposed, same sign. SB-62-068 has passed its simple majority requirement, receiving 26 total in favor, 0 against, and 14 abstentions. Moving into item B, SB-62-069. Again, we discussed this one last time, so if there are no further questions, we'll move directly into the debating period. Seeing none, does anybody wish to debate at this time? Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. All those in favor, please raise your hand and hold them high. All opposed, same sign. SB-62-069 has passed its simple majority requirement, receiving a total of 27 in favor, 0 against, and 13 abstentions. It's not on my computer, it's on this one. The only one I have it open on is this one. Moving into section 9, new business, item A, R-62-005, graduate teaching recognition. Does the author wish to speak to this bill?
Hey again, everyone. So, just to really quickly summarize what this resolution is meant to do, let me first start by asking, how many different types of GTAs do y'all think there are? 1, 2, 3? I see a couple 3s. I see a couple 2s. There are 2 types of GTAs, and the point of this resolution is to identify and distinguish between those 2 types, to make more clear the delineation that exists between their duties. To briefly summarize this idea, direct GTAs are those who are the instructor of course. They're the ones who have the right to report your grade back, your final grade. And what this resolution is saying is we are going to push to have their names or their titles changed to graduate instructors to better represent what their job is. And with that, that's all I've got to say about that. Any questions?
Are there any questions for the author? Senator James.
All right, this might be a dumb question, but the date on the bill, is this the date that it hit the first committee, or is this the date it was written, or?
I will actually defer that to the president because he can better explain that side of things, but yes.
So, which one was it? October 20th, right? You pulled stuff up so I can't see it. Yes. So that was the date that it was submitted to myself and then received to the Rules and Administration Committee. And then this was given to, who was it given to? Reese, right? It was given to academics after that. So that date should be today, as it's the first read date, which would be what we're doing right now. So thank you for that correction, and we will have that updated. Senator Nazir.
Aside from labeling the position to their actual duties, is there any other reason why we should have a differentiation between these types of graduate assistants?
Yeah, absolutely. And after I yielded my speaking time to it, I realized I wish I had spoken to that because, yes, there is another reason, a very good reason insofar as how we see ourselves, right? So other than the making the delineation obvious, more clear, the other reason is for, let's imagine you're at a job interview and you're being asked what exactly is a GTA. So you're assisting. No, I'm instructing. So this is to get over that hurdle of, for example, the job market saying, what is it you do exactly as a GTA? you must be assisting. No, I was assisting my students in their learning, but I was teaching, I was instructing. And this gets, like I said, frees up 10 minutes of that conversation.
Senator Turan.
Could you potentially see, like, I guess, pay differences between the different rankings? Like, is this setting you up for that concern kind of deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is actually a part of this, right? This is a first step in opening up that line of conversation between grad students and the upper level administration, because this has been such a long, drawn out conversation and very little has been done to get the pay to change. This is a first step in saying, all right, we are getting to be discontented now. Let's actually come to the table. We want to be heard. So yes, this is a first step towards that in ideal, in principle.
Senator Wright, do you still have a question?
I was just wondering if there were any other universities that you know of that use this naming scheme.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, if you can go to right there, line 23, as an example, there is Texas A&M. There are several other universities that I've been made aware of. None of course are coming to mind right now when I need it, right? But yes, there are other schools that do use other naming conventions.
Senator Wang.
Since, like, on the first part, whereas you talk about GTA, GRA, and then GSA, they are, like, categorized the same in the manual. So after the name change, is that means, like, you're not part of that? Or you're still in that?
Right. So what this name change is doing is really just better delineating, like I said, that difference. So, for example, a GTA would still, who is actually assisting an instructor, would still be recognized as a GTA. However, those of us who are the instructor of course, we would now be known as graduate instructors. However, all the other names would stay the same, representing what it is they are doing. So the GRA, those are graduate research assistants. They are in fact assisting still the instructor that they are working under, so forth and so on. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Senator Wang.
So I want to know, because there are GTAs, like there are two different type, kind of. There are people who actually like assisting. There are people who actually teaching. So how do you get the difference in between these two after the name change?
Right. So this was actually brought up in conversation earlier today with one of the deans that I was speaking with. This delineation that occurs between GTAs indirect and GTA directs. That delineation isn't necessarily the fact that you're teaching, because indirect can also teach. However, the difference is that they are not allowed to submit their grades, their final grades. So the delineation occurs in that act of being the instructor of course. So this would potentially require a follow-up later to better explain that and to better categorize this. But this is just, like I said before, that first step in getting the push going to make things work, to get things addressed.
Senator Nazir.
Do you know any other graduate assistants that like face that issue of like being labeled as an assistant rather than an instructor?
Yeah, actually, so last year when I first got here, actually, this was a topic of conversation within my own department about why are we assistants? Who are we assistants? Professors, I don't think I'm assisting anyone, am I? So yes, there are other grad students, and I have had that conversation a couple of times, and that is where this resolution came in, was through those conversations of other grad students saying, you know, I wish we were better recognized for what we were doing. I wish our names at least reflected that job, because this is going to be a hurdle in the job market, right? At the very least, this is going to be a hurdle in the job market. We were even going back to having conversations with our families about, oh yeah, I remember when I got my acceptance letter in a GTA position, mom and dad were like, so you're assisting someone? What is that? No, I'm teaching. I'm teaching. Does that answer your question though? Yeah.
I saw a hand over there, but I didn't see who it was. Senator Khan.
I know we've already talked about this, but I was wondering if you might have a clear answer to this now, but who directly makes this change for the name change?
Right, so this would go up the board, the chain of command from us, right? This would go to, obviously, the dean and the provost, who then ultimately make that decision. There is question as to whether or not this is a cosmetic change at the university or a actual legal change, because there is this discussion and no one has a clear answer for it yet as to whether or not it's the Board of Regents that says you absolutely have to name them this, or if this is just the school. Does that answer your question? So this goes, like I said, up to them and they decide.
Any other questions for the author? Seeing none, thank you. As this is a resolution, we will move into the debating period. All those wishing to debate. Senator Zacharias.
With a motion, I move to change line 23. There is just a part that's grammatically incorrect. It said, whereas other universities, i.e., correct way of doing that would be e.g., i.e. means i.e. means in other words, e.g. means for example. And that's it.
That's a grammatical one, so we don't need to vote on it. But thank you for catching that. Is there anyone wishing to debate on this resolution? Senator Sanchez.
With a motion to adopt by unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, R-62-005 is adopted with unanimous consent of the Senate. Moving into our new item B, FB-62-013, that was correct. Does the author wish to speak to this bill?
Yes. Sorry, guys. The Budget and Finance Committee didn't plan to put a funding bill on the floor this week, but HALO, which is one of the organizations, is trying to fundraise for their event, and it would really help them if we could get the bill passed tonight as opposed to a week from now. So that's why we put it on the floor. So sorry about that.
I know the numbers were explained earlier, but can everybody see and make out all of the material? Except for us, who are looking that way. No, you're fine. So, with that, are there any questions for the author? Senator Zacharias.
I know that we typically include what's left after this allocation. Do you have that number?
Could I tell it to you in remarks and announcements while I look for the email? Or do you want me to? Is that okay? Or do you want me to answer now?
You
Is that good? Okay.
Any other questions for the author? Seeing none, we'll move into debate on this item. Is anyone wishing to debate at this time? Senator Mounts.
I move to pass by unanimous consent.
Sorry, doing two things at once. Any objections? Seeing none, FB-62-013 passes with unanimous consent of the Senate. We'll move past Section 10, swearing in, to Section 11, remarks and announcements. Anyone have a remark or announcements, as I see many hands? Senator Brown.
Hey everybody. So next week, Friday, is Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated's 12th annual Miss Black and Gold Scholarship Competition. And I hope y'all got y'all tickets. I mean, if y'all don't, I have tickets. They're $10. So if you need a ticket, just see me after the meeting. Thank you.
Senator Nazir.
Does anybody know what next Tuesday is? Okay, all right answers, but I was just hoping that somebody would say the election. It's the mayoral election, Tuesday, November 5th. If you aren't registered or you need to revise your registry, you can go to ksvotes.org. So you can still do that. If you aren't registered, it'll go into effect on November 5th. Advanced ballots, the requests for advanced ballots are closed. And early voting is happening right now. So you can go into any polling location and vote. Unlike on election day, you have to go to your polling location. And it's really important that you look into candidates, see what they have in common with you, what their values are, and their voting history, if they have been in a position before. It's really important to vote in this election, not just a presidential election, because you can start local and move up to a federal level, and if you really don't like a certain candidate, it's really important that you start local so that later on, if you do support them, you can support them at a federal level. But if you have any questions regarding candidates or registering, please see me. Thank you.
Senator Sanchez.
Okay, so it is officially probate season, and my sorority is having their first line after our founding line. So it's really dear and near to me, and I'm very passionate to bring in these new girls. So if you guys have a chance Friday at 7:06 p.m. in front of Wallace Hall, bring your mittens and sweaters and jackets because it'll be a little chilly, but I really would appreciate if you guys came out to support my sorority. And then as well, that will kick off Devo Week, but Poder Week. So it's our semester week of programming. So next week, Monday through Thursday, we'll be having different events going on. So Monday, we'll have a Meet the Divas. You'll get to meet the ladies, and we get to speak to us more if you don't already know us. And, of course, the new members that are going to be announced. And then Tuesday, we have either donation drive. Sorry, guys. Thursday we have a movie night donation drive in the ODI, so come and watch a movie about foster care. That's our local philanthropy, so it'd be really nice if you guys came out as well, and then you get to donate different items so that we can give to children in need. And then Wednesday is our informational, and Tuesday is our Unifying Minorities group discussion, so that's also a good way for you all to get engaged about the different misconceptions that you may have as a student of color or just as an ally, that you can come and join in on the conversation. And all week long, we're also having a raffle for a warm, fuzzy winter basket. So I know it's getting cold out, and if you guys want to come and support, I would love and appreciate all of that.
Senator Zacharias.
So I know it was annoying when I asked for that, and I saw a few eye rolls, and it's okay, but I read in our statutes that it actually has to be on our bills. Like, it's in one of our statutes in the journal So that's why I was asking you for that. I think it's really important that we care and pay attention. I know this one was pretty self-explanatory. It was just for organizational funding, but some of them, we should care more and look into it. And it's not just a time for us to sit in our seats and look at our phones. It's a time for us to pay attention and care about what we're doing.
Senator Mounts. Treasurer Osterman.
So I sent an email to Michael last week to send out, and then I don't know if that happened, but it's okay if it didn't because I have it right here. So the remaining for organizational funding is $7,047 for this semester, which would be, oh goodness, what is it? There you go. Thank you. Thanks, Gabe. And then for individual funding, it's overall remaining is $23,500 because we didn't allocate anything this week. And then, what was I going to say? Oh, I didn't realize that it was supposed to be on the funding bill. It wasn't on the template that I had from last semester. So since it's in the journal, I'll start putting it on every week so that we have just the count there, and then we won't have to send out extra emails or anything either. So, thanks.
Senator Day, I had you next.
To echo a previous senator's point, I think it's very important that we don't spend our time looking at our phones and not paying attention to what's going on, because regardless if you think it's boring, it is your job to actually be paying attention.
Remarks and announcements is not the time to berate your fellow senators.
Okay, then.
So, Senator Izzo.
Just to the person who was asking, the university tweeted out that the presidential announcement is at 2 for Thursday.
Senator Mounts, do you still have one?
Alrighty, y'all. It's cold and flu season. Go get your flu shots. If you're sick, please stay home. I know I approved. At least I'm hoping I'm as compassionate as I'm hoping my other chairs are as compassionate as I am, and approving people to be gone from Senate when they're sick. I have a terrible immune system, so please don't bring your sickness here. I get sick so many times a year, and it's horrible. So please take care of yourself. Get enough sleep. Drink lots of water. Do emergency or whatever, just in case. Do all that stuff. Get your vitamins. Please, please, please be healthy. We need you all here.
Senator Day.
To echo what I previously said, I apologize for how I handled myself at that moment. I just felt very strongly about that, and I didn't express it very thoughtfully or without emotion, so I would like to conduct myself better in the future. I'm very sorry.
Senator Miller.
All right, guys. So the SVO was here last week, and they were talking about the suicide prevention flag hunt that we're doing. That's going really great. We're going until the 10th. So just to reiterate, last week, every day we're putting down 22 flags at a different location on campus, and each one of those flags has a dog tag and a card with suicide prevention hotline tips and stuff like that to know if someone does have suicidal tendencies. So we've actually had a lot of those taken off of the flags, which is a good thing. We don't want the flags gone, but we want those gone. But the thing is and you want to pass this on to your constituents, because when you take that tag off, if you take a selfie with it, then post it on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and use the hashtag SVO22, then you're going to be put into a drawing for a $25 or $50 gift card at the end of the flag hunt on the 10th. So we don't have a lot of those posts, so it's great that people are taking them, but if the people want to be a part of the raffle system, they just have to make sure that they post that. Also, there's also bigger cards on the flags. There's 2 cards per day that they can actually take those and receive a shirt. So just wanted to update you guys so that everyone knows about that. Thank you.
Senator Nazir.
This is just something that came in my mind today, but I feel like in the midst of getting a new president, I feel like this is the best time to talk to your constituents about what they want to see in a president. Maybe come up with questions that if you do get the chance to talk to them, you can ask about their goals, what they plan to do, what they want to see. So I think this is like one of the best times to do so.
Senator Wang.
So last week I went to the Capitol and I saw Lauren Kelly there. That was cool. And then the senators were like talking to us about spread the words about census. It's coming back. So every 10 years, Kansas doing this count of how many people live here. And then this is the first time they're trying doing it online. So, and then you need to let everyone know to fill this form online so we get funding based on number. So people know there's so many people living in Kansas. And then actually right now they're looking for people who are looking for a job, part-time job. You want a day job or like a week or like longer, just part-time, helping them like making phone calls and then like going to neighborhood, knocking at doors to find out like how many people actually live in the household. Like no matter your document or undocumented, they don't track those. They only track the numbers. So tell people about it. And then actually, if you are bilingual, you get paid $16. It was pretty good. If it's not bilingual, you still get to get paid like $10 per hour. So if you're looking for a side job, please tell people, tell your friends, tell everybody about this. It's coming up. It's a great opportunity for our community to. On the past years, like Kansas is one of the places that have a lowest report. So they try to change it. So we need to tell our I can't speak sometimes. Sorry. So we need to tell our fellows about this thing. It's coming up. That's it.
Senator Khan, do you still have him?
Yes. So, by show of hands, how many of you know the organization Muslims for Change? I can't wait for Saturday. Oh, hey, wait for it. I wasn't there yet, but thank you. So, Muslims for Change has been on campus for over a year, and we've been wanting to become a sorority. Now, the new member presentation for Muslims for Change is on Saturday, 3 p.m., second floor of the RSC. And I believe as SGA, we represent students. And going out to this new member presentation will mean a lot, and showing up, to support Muslims for Change, also known as Mu Delta Alpha now. It would be great on our part since they are the first Muslim sorority in the state of Kansas. And this is the founding class. So I would encourage each and every single one of you to show up. Thank you.
Senator Mounts.
To reiterate what the 2 senators ago said, not only do not only does the census figure out like how money is allocated at the federal level to the state of Kansas, it also determines our representative districts. And so the more people that do it, the better idea and the better represented you, at least theoretically, should be. So please spread the word. Please work for it. You know the government needs workers all the time. So it is super, super important because we want to be as best representative as possible, not only at the federal level, the state level, but also we should be representative as an SGA at our level as well. So please go do that.
Senator Webb.
All right. So my senior design team is designing a rocket for our senior design project, and we're going to be launching our subscale not this Saturday, but next Saturday out in Argonia, Kansas. So we're inviting all the people that we can to come. It's going to be between 11 and 1, probably going to launch it around 12. So if you want to come see some rockets launch or, God forbid, knock on wood, a really cool explosion, then please come on out and support us. Thanks.
What kind of ignition system are you using? Ignition system.
Solid propellant motor.
That's what I figured. Sorry for that detraction. Treasurer Osterman.
I'm really sorry, guys. I made a mistake when I was doing that. So I accidentally told you the number. I added instead of subtracted. I've never done that before. Okay. So it's $3,054.36 divided by 4 weeks leaves us with a budget of $763.59. But in the past, we've had more requests at the beginning of the year than at the end of the year, and at the beginning of the semester than at the end of the semester. So I think we're sitting pretty good. So that's it. Oh, and then for the rest of the year, it's $18,054.36.
Any other remarks and announcements? Seeing none, I have one. I need the following senators to see me immediately after being released. Senator Navarro, Ritchie, Azedlani, Webb, Brown, Miller, you, not her. Sorry, I realized I forgot to say the first name. It was John Miller. Bradley, Wright, Day, Majors, Lepetsky, Ezel, and Glover. Senator Zacharias.
Senator Cotto, will you see me after the meeting?
With that, let me get back to the right form here. We will adjourn at 8:53 p.m. with a silent roll call. So, what I need from y'all is